Welcome to the Derek Creason Show. This is episode 7. I am your host, Derek Creason. As always, I welcome your feedback, your questions, your suggestions, anything you want to say to me. Email me at derek@derekcreason.com. That's my email address. Or you can hit me up on social media at Derek Creason on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You can also head over to my website, derekcreason.com. Sign up for my newsletter there to get the latest updates so you can stay up to date with what's going on with me. And then lastly, my book, 20-something, is available on Amazon. You can get it on Kindle or paperback. There's links to it all over my social media pages, or you can just go to amazon.com and type in my name, Derek Creason, and it will show right up. Welcome, everybody. Today is Tuesday, November 1st. So what have I been up to lately? Well, first off, I just want to say to the world, watch out. Jackson got his permit. My oldest son, he just recently went and passed the written test, and after a quick stop at the DMV coming up real soon to make it official, he will be out driving and hitting the road. So he'll be hitting the road, and I'll be hitting that imaginary brake pedal and holding on to that crash handle harder for dear life. But all jokes aside, I'm super excited for him, and I'm super proud of him for studying for that test and then just showing more responsibility lately as he's grown up into a 14-year-old and as he continues to grow older. It's just kind of awesome to see your kids grow up and learn to be successful. So that's been a lot of fun lately, and I'm sure it'll be a lot more fun as we continue to go. Next up, I missed Halloween. But really, did I? So I enjoy the pictures afterwards of everybody's cool costumes and their kids and blah, 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 blah. I enjoy claiming dad tax or safety inspection on the candy. For me, mostly it's just Snickers, Reese's, and Starburst. I do not miss the costume drama. I don't miss trick-or-treating in the cold and all the shenanigans that go along with that. For that reason, I'll say thanks to the Army for being gone. I'll pick up on it next year, so I'll attempt to be more excited and more into it next year. My kids will be older, so it'll probably be a lot easier when the youngest is 6, going on 7, since I missed out on it this year. So next year will be more fun, etc., whatever. I'm just looking forward to the candy, mostly. And the last 3 weeks, I have been working on my diet. I ate a lot of junk food and chow hall food for a good 5-6 months without paying attention. I have been focusing more on paying attention to what I've been eating. In the last 3 weeks, I've been eating vegetables. I completely cut out snacks and soda. I've taken my caffeine intake down a whole lot to only 1 coffee in the morning. No caffeine pills, no sodas, no energy drinks. I might even get myself all the way off of it for a couple of days. I never would have guessed I'd be able to get that low on caffeine and still be all right. But I'm mostly surprised at how well the vegetables actually work. I've always heard you're supposed to eat your vegetables, blah, blah, blah. We all know that. But once I started actually eating a lot of vegetables every day, I actually have a lot more energy. I also don't feel like I'm restricting myself at all. Once every 7 to 10 days, I'll go get a fast food meal or a pizza to do some refeeding. This has been very easy and sustainable, and dare I say, enjoyable. Just eating healthier, making good decisions. And the healthier the food I eat, the less snacks and stuff I need. I don't even feel like I'm depriving myself. So if you are interested in making some small healthy changes for yourself, I would recommend you go check out a guy named Jordan Syatt of Syatt Fitness on Instagram. His handle is @SyattFitness, and I'll also link to it in my show notes. But he's just a real down-to-earth dude who just loves helping people be healthier. And he has a great way of explaining things, sometimes very bluntly, but he just explains things like, no, that's dumb, or hey, this is what's worked, or just very easy. It doesn't feel like it's some super high-end program to get to. It's just pretty cool. So go check him out and give him a follow. All right, coming up today on the show, we've got movie reviews. I've got 4 movie reviews for you. They are new and improved, so that'll be fun. I'll also cover the latest news. We'll talk about Elon Musk buying Twitter, because that's the big thing in the news right now. And then we'll also talk sports. I've got a lot of pro wrestling updates from both AEW and WWE, and we'll have some breaking news from the XFL that we'll cover as well. That's what's coming up on today's show. All right, movies. We got 4 movie reviews coming up for you today. And just as a quick refresher, I think I may have talked about this in one of my early episodes a couple years ago, but I don't remember. So we'll cover it again real quick. My movie review scale is on a 1 to 5 scale, no half points, and they are buckets of popcorn. So 5 buckets of popcorn is great, 4 is good, 3 is okay, 2 is meh, and 1 is bad. So that is my super sophisticated movie review scale. Let's get into the movies. First up is Bullet Train. The synopsis of this movie, if you haven't seen it already, it's Brad Pitt and kind of an ensemble cast. The synopsis says, 5 assassins aboard a swiftly moving bullet train find out that their missions have something in common. Not a very detailed sentence, but it is what it is. This movie got a 53% score on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics and a 76% score from the audience. So first off, I just want to say that this movie is actually a pretty fun story. Everyone tends to get excited for insane professions in movies like an assassin or a bank robber, because obviously you would never go do that in real life. So you can disconnect your real life and pretend what it would be like to be fascinated by that. And then you can also armchair quarterback it like, I wouldn't have done that. That was a terrible idea. The character intro graphics were very stylish, kind of popped up whenever a new character showed up, and it would be in both English and in Japanese. I thought that was kind of a cool idea since the movie takes place in Japan, and I think it probably had a big Japanese audience in premiere. There was a lot of Japanese-based characters in it. The story introduced a fair amount of characters and intertwined them all through flashbacks as Brad Pitt worked his way through his mission and was running into new characters and figuring out how he had met them in past parts of his life. Each character had a distinct motivation that was shown, and you could easily understand why they were doing what they were doing. The bad guy was built up with a brooding mystique and a real sense of being a badass killer who you shouldn't mess with. I won't spoil the ending, but it tied all the stories together and it had a pretty fun payoff. There was a decent amount of violent action and blood, lots of good fighting and martial arts. There's also a hilarious cameo that I won't spoil. Bullet Train was rated R for strong and bloody violence, pervasive language, and brief sexuality. I enjoyed it for all the reasons that I mentioned just a minute ago, and so on my scale, I give it 4 buckets of popcorn on my movie scale. All right, next up is Unbreakable. This movie came out in 2000. It was a Bruce Willis thriller movie. Most people probably saw it. The synopsis is, a man learns something extraordinary about himself after a devastating accident. Another very short sentence synopsis. Some of these crack me up. It got a 70% score from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes and a 77% score from the audience. I had not seen this movie in a long time. I decided to go back and watch it the other day. It was more of a slow burn of a film than I remembered. I noticed that there was not a lot of dialogue, but what dialogue there was really told the story it needed to and moved it along. This movie slowly brought up the interesting idea and theories from Mr. Glass that the comics are an exaggerated version of real life. He articulated a lot of common tropes such as the hero's journey, the villain monologuing, how the artists convey the motivations and reasons behind their characters, and so on. Mr. Glass meets Bruce Willis, who's David Dunn in this movie, and encourages him to explore this possibility. David reluctantly begins to do this after he first dismisses this idea, but his son is eating it up the entire time with the fantasy that his dad might be a superhero. The movie slowly builds up to his first mission of going out in public and getting visions of the evil that people do when they bump into them in the crowd. He doesn't have any spandex or cool costume or uniform or outfit. He just wears a big freaking poncho that can hide his face. He ultimately completes his first mission of vigilante justice and saves some kids. And then the movie ends with him embracing his new power and his new calling to right these small wrongs that he finds as he walks around Philadelphia. It's an M. Night Shyamalan movie, so there's always some type of twist in the movie because that's what that director is famous for. And the big twist at the ending was that Mr. Glass was the evil mastermind all along, and he had committed the acts of terrorism to uncover the hero. And at the end, David had the cops put him in jail. And Mr. Glass was played by Samuel L. Jackson, so always a good movie with Samuel L. Jackson. Most everybody thought this was a one-off movie for many, many years until the next movie I'm going to review. So we'll talk about that in the next movie, in the next review. Unbreakable was rated PG-13 for mature thematic elements, including some disturbing violent content and for a crude sexual reference. I don't remember that at all. The way they rate these cracks me up, or what they rate them for. So on my scale, I would give it 4 buckets of popcorn. It is a good movie. All right, next up is Split. This movie came out in 2016, and the synopsis reads as follows. 3 girls are kidnapped by a man with a diagnosed 23 distinct personalities. They must try to escape before the apparent emergence of a frightful new 24th. So that is actually a 2-sentence synopsis, but it's actually pretty accurate. That's the whole movie. Split got a 78% score from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes and a 79% score from the audience. And just to Rotten Tomatoes, if anything over 75% is considered good. That's how they kind of do their scores. And if it's lower than 60, it's considered crap or rotten. The interesting part of this movie that was cool to watch, even though the synopsis was like the whole story, it's just this guy kidnaps these 3 girls and they're trying to escape, was to watch the amazing acting of James McAvoy. McCabe, I don't know how you say his name. But anyways, he's a really talented actor. He jumps between 6 or 7 or so of the 23 personalities in his head expertly. You never know who's going to come up to talk next. He shows really well how they all kind of fight over the light, or whose turn it is to be in control of Kevin's body. It does lean heavily towards like a Halloween slasher type film, with most of the characters getting killed, but it has a much bigger psychological element to it versus just a gory slasher film with a chainsaw. This movie came out in 2016, so I don't think I'm going to spoil the ending. Spoiler alert, if you don't want to hear the ending, pause or skip now. The girl survives when he lets her live. The big M. Night Shyamalan twist came during the credits when people were talking about the news story, and they mentioned, wasn't there some other crazy guy in a wheelchair 15 years ago? And then the camera slowly pans down to the next customer at the diner, and it's Bruce Willis as David Dunn again, who says, yeah, his name was Mr. Glass. And then boom, cue the big reveal dramatic music. Can you believe it? And they didn't even resolve what happened with Kevin or Barry or the Beast or whatever you want to call him. So they left it open for the story to continue. But basically it just kind of did the whole movie about the guy with 23 different distinct personalities. I don't know how accurate all the DID stuff is, dissociative identity disorder, how accurate that was that they portrayed that, or if they took a bunch of liberties like movies do sometimes. I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know. But it was definitely very well acted and a little creepy, but just entertaining. And that's what I like out of movies. I want to be entertaining. Split was rated PG-13 for disturbing thematic content and behavior, violence, and some language. So for all of that, I give it 4 buckets of popcorn. All right, next up is Glass. This is the 2019 sequel to Split. The synopsis is, security guard David Dunn uses his supernatural abilities to track Kevin Wendelcrum, a disturbed man who has 24 personalities. This got a 36% score on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics and a 67% from the audience. So most people did not like this as much. This came out in 2019. I remember thinking it sounded cool because it was expanding on that whole kind of universe. And I had heard that it was tied to Unbreakable and Split. But at the time, I had not seen Split yet. And I couldn't remember much about Unbreakable because it had probably been 15, 20 years since I had seen it. So somehow this movie fell through the cracks and I never saw it. So fast forward to a few days ago, something reminded me of this movie. And so I looked it up and found the order of all the movies and how they're all related. And I set out to watch them. So that's why they're all in my movie reviews this week. So while Unbreakable was the origin story of David Dunn and Mr. Glass, and then Split was the character development chapter of The Beast, Glass takes this story world that we've been introduced to and expands it greatly. It picks up 3 weeks after the story in Split has taken place. Philadelphia is worried about the Beast, who keeps kidnapping girls to eat them. David Dunn now runs a home security company, and his grown son helps him to run his secret vigilante missions at night. Sometimes the cops are looking for him, sometimes they're not. But you can tell that he's been scheming and has grand plans that are going to unfold throughout the rest of the movie. They all end up being targeted and working against the evil psychologist lady who is working to give them lobotomies and remove their superpowers and convince them that they don't exist. They're just normal people who've gone crazy. Mr. Glass outsmarts them all and monologues, and all his plan is to show the world about superheroes, that they do exist among us, regular humans. And then we go on to learn that the evil psychologist lady was part of a secret, unnamed group whose mission was just to kill people with the abilities to keep Earth fair for all of us mere mortals. I was surprised at how the movie ended with the three main characters with special abilities. I didn't see that coming. It wasn't really a twist. I just expected a little bit more. I don't know if I believed the girl named Casey forgiving and accepting Kevin and all his personalities and working to help him so quickly just after being kidnapped and watching her friends get murdered 3 weeks prior. I thought that was a little far-fetched. They built up the ending, and I was expecting some big Avengers-type fight on this big building they kept referencing, and then it ended up being just a fight in the parking lot, and the side characters posting a YouTube video clip and hoping that it would go viral to show the world that superheroes do exist. So that was kind of a big letdown. I'm not sure how it was supposed to go on. I also thought it was kind of a letdown. They came up with this cool super secret group that was against the good guys, and they didn't really expand on that at all. It just, hey, they all had some secret tattoo. They could have expanded that or made that a little more interesting. It wasn't very well thought out. I really liked that they started world building and expanding the story from the first movie. Then I got disappointed that it all got shut down so quickly. If it took them 19 years to build up the story, I was really surprised at the ending that they didn't really leave it open to continue it on. Glass was rated PG-13 for violence, including some bloody images, thematic elements, and language. It was still better than that one M. Night Shyamalan movie about the plants trying to kill everyone, which that one was just terrible. This one was just okay, and so for all the stuff I mentioned, it was entertaining, but the story kind of let you down a little bit towards the end, so I only gave it 3 buckets of popcorn on my scale, just okay. All right, next up is the news. So the big news from last week, over the weekend, and this week is Twitter. Twitter was bought out by Elon Musk. It all got finalized. And I'll link all these stuff I'm going to talk about. I'll have links in the show notes. But here's what Elon Musk said verbatim about why he bought it. He says, quote, "The reason I acquired Twitter is because it's important to the future of civilization to have a common digital town square, where a wide range of beliefs can be debated in a healthy manner without resorting to violence. There is currently a great danger that social media will splinter into far right-wing and far left-wing echo chambers that generate more hate and divide our society." End quote. I put a link to the full statement in the show notes as well. So there has been a lot of uproar by people on the left claiming all kinds of outrageous things. And also many people on the right have been celebrating, as it's been a win against big tech censorship, which if you aren't aware of or have been paying attention the last few years, there is quite a bit of. I saw one comment that mentioned, and it said, "The left isn't worried that they'll be banned or targeted. They know it isn't going to happen and nobody's calling for that. They are simply worried that other viewpoints will be heard. They know they cannot compete in a free and open ideological marketplace." I would tend to agree with that, and in my opinion, it's been a great thing for free speech. Free speech is ugly and it's hard. It means you're going to hear stuff you disagree with. You may even hear vile and disgusting things. It means you're going to have to voice your dissent and disagreements and denounce things like hate speech and more. But I would argue that free speech is far better than having censorship, authoritarianism, only getting one narrative or opinion forced upon you, and then being persecuted for disagreeing against the groupthink. Twitter did this for a very long time with their algorithms and censorship. It's been no secret that they've been heavily left-leaning, and so hopefully this will be more of a swing back towards the middle, and people will be allowed to discuss things from all ideological perspectives. Now, regarding Elon Musk, I don't really think he's a conservative. I think he may be more of a traditional liberal, if such an archetype still exists. I think he may hold some liberal views, but he also feels that they should be fairly articulated and debated on their merit, just like any other ideology. People from the left tend to sit on the one-way street named Tolerance Boulevard and demand that you accept their premise. They want you to affirm their beliefs, and then they have no room for any other idea. Any other competing idea is immediately shunned as racist, homophobic, sexist, bigoted, etc., and dismissed. They tend to default to this tactic as their arguments most oftentimes cannot stand on their own merit. Seth Dillon from the popular satire account The Babylon Bee said the following: The Babylon Bee was tossed in Twitter jail 7 months ago for a joke that referred to an adult male as a man. We could have restored our account at any time by deleting the tweet, but we refused. It was the right call. Never censor yourself and never apologize for speaking the truth. I like that he said that. Never censor yourself and never apologize for speaking truth. So I'm going to give you my opinion on truth. I would say that the truth is powerful. It is not partisan or bipartisan. The truth cuts deep into your personal and political narratives. It'll cut through your situational ethics, and it transcends your morals, as good intentioned as they may be. This is why people who speak truth throughout history are often banned, censored, silenced, criticized, ostracized, persecuted, and even killed. Truth challenges people to look inside themselves and try to reconcile the lies they believe about my truth and my situation, and recognize and deal with that there is an absolute truth. It's why the Bible was one of the most persecuted books in the world all throughout history. The truth reveals what is ugly and dirty, and oftentimes it hurts badly when we uncover lies. We are flawed human beings, and people don't like messy. They want affirmation and things that make them feel good. I'll give you 2 big spoiler alerts around truth. 1, when you live for yourself and not for others, you won't be happy. It may take a while, but you will end up being miserable. Mark it down. And 2, if you want that absolute truth, no matter how jagged or rough it may be to swallow and accept in your life, go to the Bible. I've written blogs about this, and I have a whole chapter in my book on finding your faith. Nothing else matters but the gospel. I urge you, whether you're searching for philosophical truths, personal truths, political truths, cultural truths, go study the Bible. You'll find your way there eventually if you're a serious study of anything. I challenge you to seek truth in your life, and I pray it will lead you to the Bible and a personal relationship with Jesus of the Bible. Next up in the news, here is another story that hasn't gotten a lot of coverage over the last week. The New York State Supreme Court reinstates all fired unvaccinated employees, orders back pay, and says that the state violated rights, acted arbitrary and capricious, and notes being vaccinated does not prevent an individual from contracting or transmitting COVID-19. Okay, so hold on. I'm not a lawyer, and you probably aren't either. I don't know what arbitrary and capricious means. I'm pretty sure I know what arbitrary means, but capricious, I'm gonna have to go look that one up. The arbitrary or capricious test is a legal standard of review used by judges to assess the actions of administrative agencies. It was originally defined in a provision of the 1946 Administrative Procedure Act, which instructs courts reviewing agency actions to invalidate any that they find to be arbitrary, capricious, and abuse of discretion or otherwise not in accordance with the law. The test is most frequently employed to assess the factual basis of an agency's rulemaking, especially informal rules. So when a judge or an administrative agency makes a decision without reasonable grounds or adequate consideration of the circumstances, it is said to be arbitrary and capricious and can be invalidated. In other words, there should be absence of a rational connection between the facts that are out there and the choices that were made. There should be a clear error of judgment, an action not based upon consideration or relevant facts, and is so arbitrary, capricious, and abuse of discretion. Basically, it's the legal test of what you said makes no sense, or what the rulings, the choices you made don't line up with anything in the real world. So that's the label for basically saying the rules and stuff you put in place are out to lunch, arbitrary and capricious. That's what that means. Today I learned. They also stated that the vaccine doesn't stop people from getting or transmitting COVID-19. They had a group of workers that were vaccinated and a group of workers that were unvaccinated, and they were all getting COVID regardless. It didn't matter. So more and more data is coming out that supports this. We're going to keep learning more as time goes on. And the Pfizer executives recently admitted in court that they didn't even test at all for blocking transmission before the vaccines went to market. We're going to table all that for now, but in a future episode, we'll dig into all the lies, the false narratives, the betrayals of public trust, and government mandates that were based in power and control on the rosy side of the scale to much darker motives on the evil side of the scale or spectrum. For example, 400% price increase of the vaccine after the latest CDC rubber stamp? Anybody? But I digress. We will talk more about that in a future episode someday. All right, finally on the news. This is going to be a short follow-up to last time, on my last episode. I mentioned how things were not going well for the current Democratic leaders in charge and that they are very likely going to get crushed at the midterm elections that are coming up soon. I read a quote about this and it said, "Politics 101 is pretty straightforward. Talk about the issues that voters care about. Democrats choose to talk about the issues that they care about." I thought that was pretty accurate. If you've been paying attention at all, it's pretty obvious that the Democrats' platform is abortion, transgender rights, and warmongering for Ukraine/World War III. They are all in on all of those issues. That is their platform. That's what they care about. That's all they talk about. That's what they want every conversation to be about. While most people may have thoughts and opinions on those issues, most people are more concerned about the economy, inflation, their jobs, and the border right now. They are working just to survive this recession and take care of their family. They get frustrated when the president goes on TV and just flat out lies about gas prices and how well the economy is doing. Just look at the growing popularity of Kari Lake. She's running for governor in Arizona. She tells things like it is. She brings receipts to her press conferences. She calls out the press on their double standards and accuses them of what they're doing for what it actually is. Here, I'll try to play a clip from one of her interviews and see if we can get it into the episode.
And the reason they did that is because this was the real news yesterday that none of you wanted to cover. We're 11 points up. You're in a frenzied panic because your chosen candidate is not winning. You didn't want to cover this, so you had to run with a completely garbage bullshit story. Shame on each and every one of you.
All right, so that was one of her news clips. Just go to her Twitter account and look at some of her interview clips. They're very entertaining for sure. But people all agree and identify with that very easily. People say, "Hey, straight up, that was crap, and this is wrong." And the media, you lied, and here's proof. The media doesn't like that. Normal people relate heavily to that. I predict that she's probably going to do well. It just goes to show the continued decline of the mainstream media and people's lack of trust in it. I'll dig into that more in another episode in the future. I think I'm going to write an episode about the downfall of mainstream media, or at least people's trust and the perception of it. So that's all I got for the news today. All right, so now we're going to talk sports. So first up, we're going to talk professional wrestling. First up is WWE. So for those of you who don't watch wrestling, each show contains lots of segments that aren't actually wrestling inside of the ring. These are backstage segments. There's promos. Promos are where wrestlers will get to talk on the microphone and state their claim to greatness or call out their adversary, or they'll pontificate about how they got screwed over last match or last week by so-and-so. And it's basically how they help build their drama and their stories to build up to their pay-per-views and have more matches where they blow off the steam of the storyline. While most of these promos are scripted, some inside baseball, if you're a big wrestling fan, is they always try to take the opportunity, if it's there, to make their opponent break character. If that opportunity is there, they're going to go for it. Nothing makes the bad guy character look less intimidating than when he cracks a smile and can't keep a straight face. They do these shows live, or they tape them live if they're not actually live. And it's just the same as like when your characters or your actors on SNL, they break character and are just trying their best not to crack up at their own jokes. It's hilarious and entertaining, both for the wrestlers and the audience. Put a link to this clip here in the show notes. But Sami Zayn is this goofy tag-along guy who's trying to be in this group called the Bloodline. And they were out there in the ring giving speeches. And Sami Zayn was able to make Jey Uso and Roman Reigns break the character and try their darndest not to crack up laughing and they're hiding smiles. It's really pretty funny. I'll link to it, but go watch it. Here, I'll try to play part of it and narrate a little bit of it as well. But it's just hilarious.
He's just not himself right now. That's it, okay? He's just not. Lately, he just hasn't been very oozy.
And now Roman cracks a smile. Jay starts to crack a smile. He's trying to cover his face. Their name is the Usos, which also means brother in Samoan. It's pretty funny. The crowd's really getting into it. Jay's covering his face hard not to crack up. It's pretty funny. And this goes on for about 2 minutes, but just go look it up and you can just tell. And then the one guy keeps trying to laugh trying not to laugh. And he tries to turn away, and Roman turns him right back to face the camera. And you can tell they're just having as much fun with it as they can because they've already lost their composure as the big, tough bad guys. So, which is hilarious. Doesn't happen very often. If you get really bored, go look up the story of all the WWF guys trying to get the Undertaker to do a spinaroonie or a takeroonie back in the day and getting him to break character. There's some pretty funny stories about that. So that's the first story for WWE. It's pretty funny. The next thing I was going to mention is that Triple H, or Hunter Hearst Helmsley, also known, his real name is Paul Levesque. He has been in charge since the August-September timeframe after the Vince McMahon scandals forced him to retire. And Triple H has slowly been changing things and fixing things. A lot of people have had a lot of very articulate complaints about WWE over the last few years. And since Triple H has taken over, he's been slowly changing and fixing a lot of those things. He has brought back a lot of previously released wrestlers who were fired. He's been making fewer matches on the pay-per-views, so the pay-per-views lately have only had 5 or 6 or 7 matches versus 10 or 12 or 15. Also allows those matches to go longer. It allows them to focus on more storytelling during the match, which is how a lot of the wrestlers generally like to prefer to tell their stories, is through their acting and physicality and their downfall and comeback and all that kind of stuff throughout the match. They're also taking out some pay-per-views, moving some on the schedule next year. They're combining some. There's going to be a lot of big changes. I think more are going to keep happening. Bound to be an exciting 2023 for WWE. Their next big pay-per-view is Crown Jewel, coming up on November the 5th, this weekend, from Saudi Arabia. Usually those pay-per-views in Saudi Arabia don't pay attention to the story too much. They just go over there and make a crud ton of money. The other big thing, Triple H brought back Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt was one of the most interesting and creative characters that WWE had for the last few years. He got let go during budget cuts, during COVID, and has been gone for a year and a half. And they're bringing him back, and his creativity is already starting to show and shine. And it's just been a very big positive for the wrestling industry as a whole. Everybody loves Bray Wyatt and excited to see what he will do now that he's back. When it comes to WWE, I don't have time to watch all their content. I usually just watch the pay-per-views at the end of the month. Occasionally I'll catch highlights. Usually I just read wrestling articles and news websites to keep up with what happened. I'll catch the highlights. But lately, SmackDown seems to keep getting better and better, enough to where I would actually start thinking about DVRing it and watching it on the weekend and trying to catch up on it on a weekly basis. It keeps getting better. I'm going to focus on it more, especially when I get home, if for nothing else, to get my kids more into wrestling, which is always fun, or friends as well. But then I also bought tickets to the Royal Rumble in January, so I'm very excited to go see that. Even though I like AEW more than WWE at the moment, going to a Royal Rumble or WrestleMania are big things for any wrestling fan to mark off their wrestling bucket list. So I'm excited to go to the Royal Rumble in January, and I'm hoping it'll be a lot better than last year's. All right, next up in pro wrestling is AEW, or All Elite Wrestling. This is the second biggest promotion for those of you who aren't big wrestling fans. It's been around for about 3 years, and it is the WWE's biggest competitor. And I watch their Wednesday night show every week, even though I usually end up watching it on Thursdays. But it is very entertaining. I enjoy it tremendously. I like a lot of their characters. They've got a lot of former WWE guys there. They also got a lot of homegrown talent that's entertaining as well. 2 weeks ago on the show, in the main event, Hangman Page got a concussion during the main event, and I thought they did a very good job. They noticed it right away. They had the doctor ringside. He was there in less than probably 4 seconds. They called the match off, and then they totally had to improvise the last 7 or 8 minutes of their live TV show. And I thought that they did a great job of having to completely improv that on the fly because one of their wrestlers got hurt. So I was really impressed with how he did it. He's doing fine a couple days later, so glad he didn't get too terribly injured. It's just entertaining to watch wrestling. Anything can and will happen. Next up in AEW, Chris Jericho is a name you probably heard if you've looked at wrestling at all. He's been around for 30 years. He's been bringing a lot of eyes. He recently won the Ring of Honor world title and has been desecrating everything that Ring of Honor stood for. Ring of Honor was one of the bigger indie promotions, so a smaller company that most big stars today, they worked their way through over the last 20 years. Ring of Honor went bankrupt in late 2021. Tony Khan, who's the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars and AEW Wrestling, he bought Ring of Honor. He brought all their talent and their titles into AEW kept the name, kept all their libraries. So they've had 3 Ring of Honor pay-per-views this year, featuring the Ring of Honor titles and matches separately. They'll also have the Ring of Honor titles and matches on AEW's TV shows. So I think they're trying to build a TV deal and spin them out back into their own type of weekly TV thing and their own promotion, and just have some wrestlers only in Ring of Honor and some only in AEW, but now it's kind of mix and match everything. Chris Jericho has taken that title and brought a lot of relevance to it, a lot more eyes to it, so a lot more people now know about Ring of Honor. So anytime people can learn more about the smaller promotions, that's cool. Chris Jericho, he's playing a heel right now, a bad guy. He's the master of reinventing himself, and he's just always entertaining to watch. Next up is MJF, or Maxwell Jacob Friedman. He has been one of the best heels and bad guys that AEW's had for the last 3 years. He's been in and out, but he is one of the most talented and amazing people on the microphone doing those promos that I talked about earlier. I'm going to link to some of his YouTube clips that you can go watch, but he gives the most emotionally charged promos. He is just super articulate on the mic. You really feel for him, even though he's the bad guy. It's just super entertaining. It's very raw. It's very real. And you're like, holy cow, that guy knows how to build drama into a story from his perspective. So he's got a long career ahead of him. He's only going to get better. I hope they don't try and turn him into a good guy babyface, but we will see. So he is in the title shot at the pay-per-view coming up in a few weeks. He also has a pretty cool catchphrase. When he's done yelling at people, he'll scream out his name, and then he'll say, "Because I'm better than you, and you know it." And everyone in the crowd screams along. And then he'll slam the microphone down and his music will hit. Pretty fun and entertaining. They also recently introduced trios titles, and they kind of lost their relevance due to all the fallout from the CM Punk all-out media scrum and the fight that came after that. So hopefully they'll be able to kind of build that back up. But their big next pay-per-view is November 19th. It's called Full Gear. So there's 3 weeks till it happens. The build-up should be pretty good over the next 3 weeks. I'm also hoping that they build FTR into the tag team title scene, but they will probably most likely run it back with the Acclaimed and Swerve in Our Glory for the 3rd time. Everyone will say, why not? Because everyone loves the Acclaimed. They are a very entertaining tag team. So they may continue to slow burn that FTR 4-belt story until the Revolution pay-per-view time frame in February or March. I just hope they can do it before the AAA or New Japan promotions want their belts back. So those are my highlights from pro wrestling over the last few weeks. Let me know what you think. All right, and finally in sports, we've got some breaking news today. The XFL announced the team names for the upcoming 2023 season. So let's go over them and see what we got. Some of these have changed. Some of them have been slightly rebranded. I think they dropped one team and they added one new team. These are the teams that we've got. And I'll say their old names first and their new names. Well, maybe not, I don't know. The Arlington Renegades, they were originally in Dallas. The Washington Defenders are now the DC Defenders. The Houston Roughnecks, it's the same name it was before. The Guardians have moved from New York down to Orlando, so they have the Orlando Guardians. The San Antonio Brahmas, which is a new team. Obviously, the Brahma Bull is one of the Rock's logo and his merchandise and all of his branding stuff, so it's kind of cool. They named a team name after him, the San Antonio Brahmas. The Seattle Sea Dragons are now the Seattle Sea Dragons. So from Dragons to Sea Dragons, whatever. The St. Louis Battlehawks, that is the same as before. And then the Vipers moved from Tampa Bay to Vegas, so they are the Vegas Vipers. So those are the team names for the 8 teams in the XFL. The league is going to kick off on February 18th, 6 days after the Super Bowl, and it's all going to be on ESPN. I'm super excited about this. Anytime you get more good football is a good thing. So I'm also excited that The Rock is involved, since everything he touches seems to turn to gold. I think it's pretty neat that they've got agreements with the NFL, so hopefully a lot of good things are going to come out of that. And then hopefully there won't be a pandemic this time to run the league into bankruptcy like it did last time. Which XFL team do you think is the coolest? Which ones are you going to root for? I think I like the St. Louis Battlehawks or the Vegas Vipers. The Vipers have kind of a cool logo, and St. Louis Battlehawks is the closest to Kansas City. So I guess I'll have to cheer for them if I'm going by location. That's all I got for sports today. Talk to you later. All right, that'll do it for today's episode. I want to say thank you guys for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, let me know. Send me your feedback. I always appreciate that. Derek@Creason.com is the email address where you can send me your feedback. At Derek Creason on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. If you want to message me or link up on social media, you can check out my website, DerekCreason.com, for all the latest updates. You can sign up for my newsletter there and stay up to date with what's going on in my life. And then also my book, 20-something, is available on Amazon. You can get it on Kindle or paperback. There's links to that all over my social media page. Or you can just go do the cool thing and go to Amazon.com and type in my name, Derek Creason, into the search bar, and boom, it'll show right up there. And so will my podcast. So that's pretty cool. I host this podcast on anchor.fm/Derek Creason. You can go listen to it there, or you can subscribe to it on all the major podcasting platforms. Go subscribe, like, and share to your heart's content. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you later.